Well, hey there, friend. Katie here. Welcome back to another episode of Joy at Home. This one's going to be a little bit of a peek behind the curtains, so to speak, or a little bit of a look into my inner world. Because today on the podcast, we're actually going to be talking about my kids. Specifically, we're going to be talking about 7 ways that my kids are considered weird in the eyes of the world. And then I'm going to share with you why I'm really okay with that. So let me start by saying that I would define the word weird like this: strange, unusual, different, or set apart. Now, this reminds me a little bit of Christianity because we are called to be set apart. We're called to be different from the world, from the ways of the world. And in doing so, the Bible tells us that there will be persecution. There will be people that make fun of us for being different or for being quote unquote weird. And so I just kind of wanted to share that definition and really just start by saying that to me, the word weird is really an endearing term. It's not a bad thing by any means. It just means that you're doing things differently than the rest of the world. I once had a mentor who said to me, she said, figure out what everybody else is doing and do the exact opposite. And that is how you will achieve success here in this world, whether we're talking about business or financial or whatever it may be. She's like, figure out what everyone else is doing and do the opposite. People will call you weird, but that is the place where you're going to find your purpose and where you're going to be able to walk in truth and to walk in your identity and to really experience joy and peace and fulfillment. It's in this space of being the weirdo. So, with all that being said, let's dive into these 7 ways that my kids are weird in the eyes of the world, or 7 things that make them different or set apart. And I want to let you know if or your kids fall into any of these 7 things, then good for you. I want to tell you, I'm proud of you. And I think that you're doing a great job as a parent. So, number one, my kids pursue their unique interests very deeply. And they really don't care what other people think about it. So, my boys, they love to go fishing. They dove into the world of learning how to create their own custom plastic fishing baits. That's one thing that they love to do. They watch, videos, tutorials on fishing, tutorials on how to make these fishing baits, and then they just went after it. Another thing that both of my boys have pursued is learning how to solve the Rubik's Cube. And they actually took it even a step further in that they sometimes go participate in Rubik's Cube competitions. Now, you want to talk about the word weird. You walk into a room full of kids who are doing the Rubik's Cube in 20 seconds or 30 seconds. Now, that is a room full of weirdos who are very, very intelligent and skilled. I would love to just see the inner workings of their mind. These kids that can solve these Rubik's Cube puzzles, like it's just nothing to them. They're just walking around solving these puzzles one-handed, right? It's so interesting and so cool and so neat to see the way that their brain is working behind the scenes. My daughter really has decided that she is very much into homemaking and homesteading. So we got chickens not too long ago, and she is really into chicken keeping. She has gotten into baking the sourdough bread and the sourdough starter and all the things that go along with that. She is making her own kombucha. She is doing things like rendering down tallow to make lip balms and hand lotions and all that kind of stuff. And let me just tell you, she's a high school kid. Now, your typical high school kid is going to say, that's really weird. That is weird stuff to be into as a 16-year-old girl. My daughter does not care. She loves it. She pursues it. My kids really do pursue their unique interests deeply. And I could not be more proud or more excited for them to do so. Number 2 is my kids consume very little what's considered popular music, television, etc. So they are really, really intentional about what they allow into their eyes and their ears. They're very intentional about their language, the language that's coming in, and the language that's coming out of their mouth. And my kids know that there is a direct correlation between what we are consuming, the inputs of our life, right? The things that we're consuming with our eyes and our ears, and then what's coming back out, the outputs of our life, because the inputs will affect the outputs. So I've shared with my kids back in high school, when I was back in high school, I used to watch scary, really scary movies with my friends, and I hated it. I never enjoyed it. I just did it because my friends were doing it. And so I was putting all this junk in my eyes and it was sinking down into my heart and my mind. And then it would come out in my dreams. And I would have these terrible dreams at night, these just terrifying, scary dreams as a direct result of what I was allowing into my eyes and into my heart and my mind. And so, because of this, I've taught that to my kids, as well as just biblical principles of what comes in is what is going to come out. As a man thinks, so he speaks, right? And it's all an overflow out of his heart. And so, my kids are very intentional about consuming very little to none of what's considered popular in today's secular world of music and programming. Number three is my kids very rarely, very rarely do sleepovers. In fact, there are one, maybe two houses or friends for each of my kids that I would even allow them to do sleepovers. And I will say this, if I could go back in time, I would have been even more diligent about this. I don't know if I really, outside of family, I don't know if I even ever would have started allowing sleepovers at other friends' homes. So one of my children was actually exposed to pornography. It kills me to say that, but it's the truth. And it was at a sleepover at a friend's house when she was somewhere in the third to fourth grade age range that she was exposed to pornography. It was being viewed behind the parents' back. And it's something that she wishes she could go back and change. And I certainly wish that I could go back and change. I would do anything actually to go back and change that. And it was a direct result of a sleepover. So my kids these days very rarely do sleepovers. And if they are doing them, then again, I am very intentional and diligent about who they're with and where they're staying and what that kind of looks like. Number four, my kids actually really value family time and siblingship, as in they want to spend time together. My kids enjoy spending time as a family. We love to have family dinner around the table together. We love to have good conversation. We love to play games together, board games, card games. And then, of course, my three kids truly enjoy spending time together. In fact, as I'm recording this episode today, they're actually out on a nature walk out in the creek. So they've got their mud boots on and they're exploring together in this very moment. And I feel like that is very unique and really sets them apart in today's world where a lot of times siblings either don't want to be spending time together at all, or they're so distracted and so into their own world, a lot of times in the world of screens, let's be honest, that they don't even want or care about carving out space and time to spend time as a family or to spend time with their siblings. So that's just something that we have raised our kids as a value. Family is a value. Being able to spend time with your siblings is a value and a gift. And I'm not saying they're perfect or that they always get along, because they don't always get along. They definitely don't always get along. But at the end of the day, they value each other and they value our family and they value the strong family bond that we have in the family unit that we are. And I feel like that's really unique and really special. Number five is my kids actually have downtime. They have time to, what I'm always saying, get bored and get creative. So this is very intentionally done, that as a family, we choose to live a fairly simple life with downtime. So we don't do things like travel ball or, sports or activities where the kids are competing in different places every single weekend or having tournaments every single weekend. We have very intentionally chosen not to do all those type of things. Do my kids play some sports and are involved in some extracurriculars? Yes, of course. But they're playing town ball instead of travel ball. And honestly, my husband is coaching the town ball. So when they're playing our local sports, it's a family thing, right? It comes back to that value of family. So we're not traveling ragged and crazy every single weekend, but rather my kids actually have some downtime, some time at home where they truly do get bored. But then as a direct result, they're able to get creative and to do amazing things and to create amazing things. And again, even to spend time together with each other, coming up with fun things to do. Number six is my kids choose, really, they really do on their own, choose modesty and they strive to protect their hearts. So this one is so cool to me. My teenage daughter really chooses modesty on her own. This is really not of my own doing, other than pouring biblical truth into her and talking about what God says about modesty and beauty and femininity. And so she chooses on her own to dress very feminine, very modestly, one piece bathing suits. A lot of times she chooses to wear long skirts, and that's completely her own doing. Honestly, she puts me to shame because she dresses so feminine and so elegant and modest and beautiful that I look up to her and I admire her in that regard. And all three of my kids are really intentional about protecting their hearts. So my two boys, we've talked a lot about how God created boys and men to be visual and how they have to work a little bit harder to be vigilant and diligent in that area. Say we're at the pool or out and about and there are women barely dressed. I've taught my boys, you need to look away. You need to respect them, even if they don't respect themselves. And the reason why is because God designed a woman for you within this beautiful gift of marriage, that someday God is going to bring that woman into your life and you're going to get to enjoy her in that way. So until that time comes, you need to work to protect your eyes and to protect your heart. And so they do. They choose to do that on their own. My boys, as they're entering the teenage years, I think it will be more important than ever to have really good and honest conversation and accountability, as the world is going to throw more and more things their way and target more of that pornography and that type of stuff at our teenage boys today. So accountability and just good conversation is going to be more important than ever. And we do put some extra precautions in place at our house. For example, none of my kids have TVs in their room by any means, but if they are, say, on an iPad in their bedroom or even working on a laptop on schoolwork or something like that in their bedroom, my boys are required to have their doors left wide open, and they get it, they understand it. They've never even argued or fought me on that, because we've talked about how that's a source of accountability. So that's going to help them make good choices in that regard. So just a tip for your boys there. That might be something that you choose to implement as well. And then let's see, number seven, my kids work on purpose because over here at our house, no one is getting handed anything. There aren't going to be handouts here. Of course, my husband and I will provide the kids' needs. We will work to meet the needs and the things that they need, clothing, right? Things for school, that type of thing. We've even provided a car for our kids. Old, it's in decent shape, but it's an older 2012 little Ford car that they are able to learn to drive with. But that is, mom and dad purchased that car. It is mom and dad's car. You're able to learn how to drive in that car, but then you are expected to work and to save up. And we've told each of our kids, you get a job, you start working, and what you save, the amount of money that you save toward the purchase of a car, dad and I will match that for you up to $5,000. So I know every family does it different. That's just simply how we're doing it here at our house, in our household. Nobody's getting handed over a car. It's just not going to happen here because I want my kids to understand and value nice things. I want them to have good work ethic. I want them to value hard work, to value savings, and to value owning something nice and learning how to take care of it. and just experiencing the joy and the privilege and the responsibility that comes with ownership, owning a vehicle, someday a house, all of that good stuff. And so my kids, they work and they work hard and they do it on purpose. My daughter works at a cafe and she works long shifts, but she does it with a smile on her face and she's making great money. And then my two boys do odd jobs around the house and on the farm, and they work for their grandpa and all kinds of different things. A little bit of entrepreneurship here and there with different things that they're doing, but it sets them apart in today's world that my kids choose to work. So if your kids are getting a job in their teenage years, good for you, mom. That is a job well done. So those are the 7 things or the 7 ways that my kids are a little bit weird in the eyes of the world today. And here is why I'm okay with it. And this is really the heart of the message that I want to share with you today. When I think back on my life, specifically my teenage years within my own life, as I'm looking back and reflecting, I was living a life as a teenager in high school that really looked good on the outside, right? I was put together, nice clothes, straight A's. I had a great work ethic. I had strong people and communication skills. All these things looked really good on the outside. I was going to church, right? Going to youth group. It looked good, looked like I was doing all the right things. But the thing is that I was really very good at hiding and covering up the messy and the broken parts that made up the inside of my life, the most precious inner workings. And let me tell you that because of the way I lived and because of the way that I did all that, I spent so many years feeling so lost and empty and broken and chasing after things that I thought was going to fill this hole in my heart. I consumed things that were horrible, horrible influences, horrible music that I was listening to, very just dark, depressing music. And I told you about the scary movies that I was watching, and all of it was sinking into my heart and my mind and really making things worse. And on top of all of that, I was choosing to hang out with people and specifically date guys who were not good influences, guys who liked to drink and whose biggest role models in life were people like Kurt Cobain and James Hetfield. If you're familiar with any of that, just very dark into very dark and broken things. And I would allow myself to spiral down the path of actually playing out a future with those type of guys. And honestly, as I reflect back, it makes me just shudder and cringe to think about what my life could have ended up like if I would have continued down that path. If the good Lord above had not intervened and just rocked me to my core, but if I would have continued down that path, let me tell you, it would have been dark. It would have been full of so many problems and just devastation and heartache and heartbreak. I don't even know if I would be here today, honestly, if I had continued down that path that I was walking when I was in high school. And because of the way that I lived like that for so long, I didn't truly step into a relationship with Jesus or fully surrender my life to the Lord until the age of 26. So I went to church, I knew about God, but I was hanging on to control. I was trying to put all the broken pieces together on my own. I was trying to hold it all together for so long and just retain control. And I did that until I was 26, until I was actually married to a good man with a couple of kids in tow. I was still like hanging on to that brokenness. Finally, at the age of 26, I gave up that control or all of the control issues. And I stepped into grace and peace and relationship with Christ. If you go clear back to the very beginning episode of this podcast, this is like years back. This is when I very first started the podcast. I think it was back in 2020, I think it was. But I share my story and I share about all of this inside the very first episode. If you want to go all the way back and hear it, you can hear my full story in episode number 1. But the point is that my young life was so different than how my kids are choosing to live their lives or how they're being taught to live their lives by the good book and by God's great and awesome wisdom. By the way, I think it's really important to say that parenting matters. It matters so much. Not that my parents did a bad job by any means. It was a little bit different situation than the situation I'm living in. My parents were divorced, and so my time was split between houses, and there were a lot of different things going on. Not that they were bad parents, they were good parents. It was a little bit of a tricky situation. And so I feel like as a parent with a strong and healthy marriage and then our 3 kids, I feel like I've worked really hard and really intentionally to plant good seeds of truth in my kids and to have lots of meaningful conversations. And I'm willing to have those sometimes uncomfortable and awkward conversations with them. And I choose to stay very involved in their choices. Everything from what they're consuming to what they're contributing to the world, to their friendships, to their faith walks. And I really think it's okay to say that parenting matters. And I think it's okay that parents take some of the credit because it does. Your job matters so, so big. Of course, we need to lean into the Lord. And of course, He's ultimately in control and where our strength comes from. But intentional parenting is such an important piece of this as you're raising up your kids. I am far from perfect, but I am really proud of my kids. And I am proud to be parenting intentionally. And it makes me feel like even though I make a million mistakes every day, my husband and I are doing some things right because this combination of weird things that my kids are, it allows them the time and the space and the freedom to pursue what really matters most and to be able to grow in the areas that matter most. Because mom, hear me loud and clear, 99.9999% of our kids are not going on to play Major League Baseball, right? Their sports careers and their extracurriculars are going to come to an end quickly, but everyone is going on to eternity someday. So your kids' faith and their salvation matters. How you're living and how you're helping them live their lives, it matters big time. Your kids being equipped for adulthood matters. Them understanding how to grow in relationship with their family and how to navigate through life's challenges and how to make good choices. That stuff matters so big time. So, if your kids are a little bit weird in the eyes of the world, if you don't allow them to sleep over or to consume popular music or scary movies, or if you encourage them to pursue their unique interest like art or music, if they actually enjoy spending time with their siblings, if your daughter is the only girl at the swimming pool in a one-piece bathing suit, or if your boy is the only kid that you know who has a hardworking job at a young age, or if you don't plan on handing your kids a car at age 16, then I commend you. And I say, well done. My kids are weird. Your kids are weird. Let's be weirdo parents together and let's be okay with it.